Other, I don't think everyone knows it. Dean, can you start?
Hi, I'm Dean. I'm in photography here too. I'm doing my self-portrait.
Okay, why?
Why?
Okay.
It's important to know who I am.
Good answer.
To find myself.
I'm Warren. Just the first year.
Outside.
This one. And I'm interested in the exchange of sensory language.
In sensory language. Yeah. Excellent. Really good. Short and sweet. Okay, well, just wait 1 second until people sit down. You don't have to bring today. Sorry about that. So we can get the book. Okay. Now, are you ready? Or do you need a minute? You're ready. Okay. Just, what are you doing right now? And what is your name?
I'm in Deleuze, and by now I am just taking a rest to think what I'm going to do in my future.
We never rest.
But actually I'm working on my previous work about the purity of the human being, and I think just making the book.
That's so much better.
Yeah, but I am still doing that.
Okay. Thank you very much. Alexandra, can you tell us your name and what are you working on?
I'm Alexandra. I'm working on my next installation of next month.
And what is it?
It's about the first time.
First time what?
Of project.
First time.
It's like the beginning.
You will see.
Aha. You don't tell us what it is. I see. And, okay. Who would it hear from you?
My name is Catherine. I'm in photography year 1, and I started in Iowa with my brother.
Mm-hmm.
And I tried to transform his pain into a piece of work.
Uh-huh. Say it again.
I tried to transform his pain into a piece of work.
His pain into this book. Okay.
What is this pain? Yes, OCD.
Mm-hmm. 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 Okay, thank you very much. Come on.
My name is doesn't matter.
And what
My
are you
work
working on?
is to break the monopoly.
Now I'm awake. Okay.
My name is Luis, and I'm currently interested on the comparison between digital color and color on painting.
Great. Fun.
I'm Benjamin. I'm in photography year 1, and I'm currently working on 3D printing auto-destructive art.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, I'm Alex. I'm still exploring video translates and how I can use them in a new way.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, I'm Esther, and I'm working on my negatives for the interim show.
Dating?
Interim show.
Interim.
Interim.
Interim. And what is it?
I'm just putting them through some tracks before they go on the show.
Okay.
I'm Ben. I'm working with the near stage of the drone.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
I am Vishal, trying to create a video sculpture for my
You need to speak a little bit louder. I'm saying to everyone, the table is quite long and the acoustics in this space are not very good. Can you repeat what you said?
Yeah, hi, I'm Vishal. I'm trying to create a video sculpture
Uh-huh.
for my future.
That's fantastic. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Julia, and I'm working on a Frankenstein potato gallery.
Thank you.
Natalia. I'm not sure what I'm working
at the moment.
And 1 second, Natalia, we'll come back to that. Okay, Natalia, would you like to repeat what you just said?
Said I'm not very sure what I'm working at the moment.
Okay, just tell us what you're interested in.
I guess I'm trying to kill a little bit of the beauty in my work.
Uh-huh. Okay, thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Valentina, and I'm working on the purpose of photography related to memories.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Max. I'm completely lost, just trying to find my way.
Okay, but tell us what you did last on Monday.
I did sculpture with a computer and a printer.
Brilliant, thank you very much.
Hello, I'm Antonio. I'm from textile design, and I'm working on my final piece that is a fabric that will develop a choreography.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Joja. I'm a final first year and preparing for the intern.
And what?
Sculpture, metal sculpture.
Metal?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Timo. I'm a photography year 1, and I'm trying to visualize recursiveness on a global scale in sculpture.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Greta, and I've started the translation of Ovid Metamorphosis.
Translation?
Yeah.
You are translating?
Yeah.
From Latin?
Yeah.
Nice. So you speak Latin, you know Latin?
Yeah, I don't speak Latin, but
No, but you know Latin.
yes, yes.
That's great. And why?
Because I think that even the translation is a metamorphosis itself.
Very good answer. Thank you very much.
I'm Marian from Fine Arts first year. I'm also a bit lost. But I tried out this thing about saying who you are and what you're doing. We did a bachelor facilitation Friday, and why did we try this out? I mean,
What work?
we were doing a bachelor facilitation with John Lawrence.
Right.
Because the bachelors are doing, they go to lectures and they don't talk, and so to get them to talk, he has taken the master students and invited them to facilitate small groups.
Oh, you mean bachelors as BA students,
Yeah,
not
yeah,
unmarried men?
Yeah.
Ah, okay.
Ah, no.
It would be really interesting.
Yeah, awesome. Anyways, and it worked really, really well. And because it created a space.
Mm-hmm.
That goes with it.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.
My name is Rupert. I'm doing Fine Arts first year, and I'm looking at Under Eurasia, or going to look at Under Eurasia.
Under what? And what do you mean by under Eurasia?
Well, I believe Heidegger coined the term.
Yes.
And I'm looking at erasing images and pulling up images.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Sasha, and I'm also doing translation. I'm doing a translation of poetry, which was originally Cyprus, then turned to be English, and now it's going to be invention. And I feel like I'm writing poetry actually now.
Okay. Great. Thank you very much, Sasha.
I'm Cecilia, stage 2 BA Fine Arts, and at the moment I'm doing two things. I'm thinking about perspective and making something related to that, but also writing something on bravery.
On bravery.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Thank you.
I'm Wes, I'm also on BA Fine Art Stage 2. I'm currently interested in substances and their kind of functionality.
Okay, good. And Isha, if you don't mind, just tell us your name and what are you interested in at the moment? What are you working on?
Hi, I'm Lisa. I'm working on
Running. Running. Okay. Tell us a bit more.
I just think if I keep running, I can separate my
Okay. We don't have a screen today, so please, everyone, find this book, Death of the Posthuman. It is on Dropbox in Colebrook, C, or you can go to Open Humanities Press and find this book as a free download, as a PDF. As we don't have a screen, please make sure that you have the text in front of you, because we're going to read through from it. Death of the Posthuman. Okay. Okay, I'm going to start today's session by going briefly over what we've done in the last 3 weeks. Anyone has something that I can wipe my glasses with? Something like that will do, yeah. Thank you. Oh, here it is. Thank you. It's one of the most annoying things. Thanks. Okay, yeah. So, last 3 weeks, we looked at this book, this monumental book, Thousand Plateaus, by Deleuze and Butler. We've done it in order to identify 3 strategies out of the 12 strategies they discuss in this book, the 12 plateaus they offer us. We looked at 3 approaches, or 3 ways we can think about art practice, or practice in general, or political practice, or the practice of living. So these 3 approaches in the language of the book, the first one is called the Horizon, the second one is called Becoming, and the third one is called the Refrain. Yeah? So here we have 3 key points: the Horizon, the Becoming, and the Refrain. And over these 3 sessions, we explored in what way they allow us to think about the contemporary art object or about our own practice. So the Horizon suggested to us a possibility of working with multiplicities. And what that means, it means that we are, the notion of the Horizon suggests that things can grow or develop or emerge not by belonging to one central root, whether it is a tree trunk or the party or the family, whatever you like. You don't need to be attached to a central root. You can just grow in different places, just like that, because that's how it happens. That's how it happens in the world. It's only a very specific mindset that we apply to the world that compels us to see everything as linked to this, to the point of origin, to a starting point. This way of thinking that is teleological, from the word telos, that means target. This teleological traditional way of thinking, that's what Deleuze and Butler are trying to get away from. They're trying to get away from thinking in terms of here is the beginning and here is the end, and the beginning and the end must be connected. It is not possible for them to be disconnected. They try not to think like that, So for instance, teleological way of thinking applied to music will mean, okay, you choose a certain scale, now you're going to play all your notes in that scale. And then you will have a very harmonious melody. You can improvise as long as you like. If you just pick notes from this one scale, it will be all harmonious, it will all be pleasant to the ear, it will all fit. But they say you can also just pick different notes from different scales. maybe what you will get is a cacophony. Maybe what you will get will be really hard to hear. So what? It might still work on some level. Yeah? So that is the rhizome. We encounter rhizomes in nature. That's how mushrooms grow. That's how the famous Japanese knotweed grows. We encounter it in politics. That is how guerrilla warfare operates. This is how ISIS operate. You know, whenever there is a way of making things that is not linked to a center, the web. Well, with the web, it's kind of interesting. Does it have a center or doesn't it? It seems that it works both ways. You could say that the web was designed as a rhizome, but it's progressively becoming more and more centristic as, for instance, more and more search is happening through one search engine, and more data is stored on the servers of 2 or 3 key internet companies. Yeah, so that's where it gets very complicated. Yeah, and part of the politics of the web is to somehow maintain its rhizomatic qualities. Yeah, because it seems quite clear that the interests of the large internet companies is to be much more centristic. Okay, so that's the rhizome. And where do we see rhizome in a work of art? Well, the rhizome, in a sense, allows you to think about your work as having elements that don't necessarily relate to each other in an obvious way. It allows you, for instance, to work in a collage, but not in a sort of collage when everything fits together like pieces of a puzzle, but a kind of, you know, it allows you to work with chaos, in other words. It tells you that it's okay to have bits that don't fit. That is fine. Okay, this is the rhizome. Then we spoke about the notion of becoming. And we said that what does it mean to become? What it allows us to do? Well, becoming is the Deleuze and Butler sort of umbrella concept or umbrella term for movement, for process, for flow, for things that don't stay the same but keep changing. Now, arguably, all things don't stay the same and all things keep changing. That includes the pyramids that have been there 4,000 years, 4,000 years, yeah? Or, you know, a flower. Everything is in the process of change. It's just that somehow we are fixated on stillness and we like to see things as somehow extracted from this flow of time. Yeah? So we prefer to see things as objects, we prefer to see ourselves as fixed identities, and what Deleuze and Butler are saying is that try not to do that. Try to look at yourself, at the world, at your work, as a process, as a flow, as a state of becoming, of moving from one state, from one solid state to the next. In fact, there are no solid states. There are only states of becoming. So, again, where do we see that? Well, we see that wherever we like to see that, because this is just how things are. You know, we mentioned a couple of weeks ago the second law of thermodynamics. Yeah? And that basically means that everything is gradually disintegrating into chaos. Yeah? So, maybe what we are trying to do as artists is to grasp various bits of matter and various bits of data and stick them together to make some sense, you know, sort of fighting against this logic of disintegration and chaos. So this is the notion of becoming. Well, one of the most interesting aspects of that is that you can play with this. You can talk about, for instance, becoming a sunflower. What does it mean becoming a sunflower? That's the example that DNG used. They talk about this sunflower. Well, you know the sunflower, this big yellow flower, yeah? And do you know the thing about it is that the sunflower seems to be sort of following the sun, yeah, kind of its stem is bending throughout the day, so the corona is exposed to the sun, like a sort of what it's called, but they want these panels, you know, for solar panel, yeah, like a kind of solar panel that rotates in order to maximize exposure to the sun rays. Yeah. So D&G say that you can think about the sunflower as this entity, as this being that just has this motor that moves it around. That will be the fixed way to look at it. But what does it mean to look at the sunflower from the perspective of becoming? It will mean to say that all there is really is this desire for the sun, desire for the warmth, desire for life, in a sense, you know, a life force. There is a certain power from being exposed to the sun. This power is being articulated in the shape of the sunflower. The sunflower is nothing else than this desire for warmth, or for sun, or for life, that is acquiring the form of a flower. So it's not first we have a flower, a fixed entity, and then we attach to it a certain device that allows it to bend. No, they say it's completely the other way around. First we have the desire for the sun, and then it's this desire that constructs all the elements that later we come to recognize as the sunflower. Yeah? So they suggest to us to first look at the creative drive. And you could also apply the same approach to thinking about your own being, or, you know, a human being. Perhaps the human being, or let's say the body, is an expression of a life force, is an expression of energy. There is no body that gets up and starts dancing or moving, but there is movement. There is this energy of becoming. And what we come to know as the body is just the physical expression of that energy. Come in. So, I just want you to get the sense how radical this proposition is. Instead of looking at the world as made of entities, we should look at the world, or D&G offer us a way of looking at the world as a force of becoming. And this force manifests itself in various material forms. It can be a sunflower, it can be a body. But what makes the body is the force of becoming. I just want to pause here for a second, and the people who came in the last few minutes, can you please say your name and what are you working on?
Hi, I'm working on adding one and adding two.
Adding?
Adding one and adding two.
I didn't hear. Did you hear?
Adding one and adding two.
Adding one and adding two.
Yeah.
To what?
To what? No, it's like adding one and adding two. Adding, Adding.
Adam 1 and Adam 2.
Yeah.
Aha. Okay, interesting. Who was the other person who came in? Aha, okay.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi, I'm Lisa. I'm Elizabeth. And I'm working on a flower.
Flower?
Yeah.
What kind of flower?
The thing that I showed
Aha.
myself.
Aha. Good, good. I'm glad to hear that. Okay. Caro, can you tell us your name and what are you working on?
Yeah, I'm Caro, and I'm working on my limitation.
Okay. Okay, fine. Right. So everyone is here now, more or less. Okay, so do you see what it is about becoming? It's not that there is an entity that sort of one day wakes up and says, I feel like doing a bit of becoming today. You know? It's not like that. There is a certain energy. There is a certain force in the world. You can call it life force, if you like. You can call it power. You can call it gravity. You can call it time. You can call it creativity. The point is that there is a certain force, and this force has material manifestations in the same way that, for instance, when snow is melting on the top of the mountain and water is running down the mountain and into the valley and fills the valley and then overflows and runs down towards the sea, yeah? On the way, it will create a shape that we'll later call the river. Yeah, it will really carve a kind of a shape in the earth that will become a river. But it's not that there is first a river and then the water conveniently flows through it. Yeah, first there is this pool. Water just needs to go. You know, it's compelled. It feels this calling to flow down. Yeah, as it is flowing down, it will create the landscape. Yeah, so we understand that about water, but what D&G compels us to do is to understand that that's how things work in general. You know, first of all, there is the urge to be creative. It is the urge to be creative that makes the human being. Yeah, because you know the human being is one of the side effects, if you like, of this creative force. And this creative force is everywhere in the world. The world is nothing else than this life force. Yeah? And this life force is simply, in other words, it's simply life. So what is life? Well, it is a force. Yeah? What kind of force? Is it divine force? No. It is immanent to life. Do you know the word immanent? You know them. Okay, so tell me what it is. What is immanent?
Something that will happen but has not happened yet.
Inevitable.
Coming from it, yeah, I think it's a better. What didn't happen? Immanent. There's immanent and immanent. Yeah, something that is imminent is exactly as you say, Ben, is about to happen. You know, imminent. Immanent is a yes.
It's an integral part of something. It's the integral part of.
That's right. Yeah, some immanent force. What did you say, Sasha?
Like something that is opposed to transcendence, so it's like something that comes
from within. Immanent force is something that comes from within.
Is that spelled?
Yes, immanent. For instance, you know, a triangle. Do you know what is a triangle? Today it's going to be really difficult because we don't have. No, I think. Yeah, that would be great. Thank you very much. So, okay. Sorry?
You have a projector.
You have a projector?
Yeah. No, I said we students have our own.
You have a projector?
Yeah, she has one.
And I think it will be okay. Yeah? Okay, so we have a triangle. Yeah? Now, what it will be, for instance, 60, 60, and 60, yeah? So how many degrees there are in a triangle? 180 degrees. Now, there are 180 degrees to a triangle, and this is immanent to the triangle. You know, it's part and parcel of being a triangle. Yeah? Do you understand? It's from within. Yeah? Now, when you say that that 3 plus 2 equal 5, it is slightly different. Yeah? There is nothing immanent in 3 plus 2 that compels it to be 5. Yeah? It somehow requires something else. It requires me to be here to make the calculation. But with a triangle, it is already built in. Or here is another, the example I often use, the example of the arm wrestling. Yeah? If Alexandra and I do an arm wrestling match now, yeah, and one of us wins, one of us puts the other hand down, it is immanent to that who is stronger. You don't need anyone to come and judge it. Yeah? On the other hand, if, for instance, there is a beauty contest, you know, and there will be, you know, we will all stand on the stage and someone will decide who is the most beautiful, then you need a judge. There is nothing immanent in that. So do you understand, yeah? So there are, now when you need someone external to come and pass a judgment, that is usually called transcendental. Yeah? That's when we call it, that's when we talk about transcendental force, or knowledge, or judgment. But immanent is coming from within. So, Deleuze's very last book is called Immanence, a Life. And that tells you all you need to know about immanence, you know, or about life. What is life? Life is immanent. It's not given from outside. It's not God blowing sort of life into Adam. You know, it's not God touching Adam with his benevolent finger like in Michelangelo's painting, you know, and giving him the spark of life. That would be transcendental. That would be life as something given from outside. But when Deleuze, yes, question?
Yes, but so this life force that comes from within, does that mean then are we using the same terms of transcendence as, so if you are reaching from within, not reaching, if you are going within, does that mean you then touch yourself? You don't need the, as in, I'm using the analogy, but you are creating that transcendence yourself rather than relying.
No. The example of God and Adam in Michelangelo is an example of transcendental life force given from outside. Yeah? Now, I don't know what will be the visual allegory for immanence. I think the sunflower is a good one. Yeah? So, there's always a danger with illustrations or examples because they can always, they can confuse as much as they can elucidate. Yeah, that's always the problem with examples. But immanence, immanent life force is not life force that was given by some divine intervention. It's life itself is its own life force. It is from within. And how it manifests? In becoming. Yeah? So, life for Deleuze and Bataille is a force. It is a force that is internal to life itself, because it is the process. And the way they often talk about it is in terms of this creative energy. You remember how last week when we spoke about the rhythm or the refrain, we looked at many examples from the birds, you know, And what they are saying, they say the transcendental approach would say that a bird or a cat are marking their territory in order to indicate, basically as a political act, say this is my territory, if you go in there, you get clobed. Okay, don't stay away. They say there is another way to look at it, a more immanent way. What the cat is doing, or the dog, when they go and mark a territory, they first of all create. They first of all express themselves. It is this expressive act that is also a territorial act. Expressive acts are always territorial. Yeah? So it's not that first there is some kind of politics of territory, and then they get pretty pictures to market. No. It is the creative force, the force of self-expression or expression that is also a territorial force. So here you have these three modalities, three ways of entering the plateaus, the 1,000 plateaus, the rising, becoming, and the refrain. Now, the refrain was, to me, perhaps the most interesting, because it speaks about the power of the rhythm in your work. And by the way, I offer it to you as an experiment. Look at the artwork that you like, that really works for you on whatever level, you know, and a work of art that you come back to again and again. And I think you will be able to identify a rhythm within it. The reason something really works is because it has a rhythm. And one very good way to start talking about the work of art, whether your own or someone else's, is to look at it from the perspective of the rhythm. How the rhythms are, can you hear it, or is it just all the time breaking up? You know, if there are rhythms, then something is happening there on a sensual level. Because what is a rhythm? A rhythm has no intellectual message. What is the content of the rhythm? So here we have a rhythm. What is the content of the rhythm? The content, in a sense, is not important. What is important is the cadence. It doesn't matter if I do it with my knuckles or if I do it with, or with this. It doesn't matter. What matters is that you enter into a certain ride, you know. You expect the next thing to happen. So it's not about content. It's not about who made the sound. It's that there was a sound, and there will be another one, and there will be another one. And when you are in this rhythmic space, you are in a kind of trance. Now, some filmmakers, like Hitchcock, for instance, they know how to edit the film in a way that really puts you in this state of trance. Then it doesn't really matter so much what the actual shots are about, or what is the content of each individual sequence. It is the cuts between the sequences that create another dimension to your being in the movie. Yeah? So the question was for us, how to start thinking about your own work in these rhythmic terms. I'm not saying that there is the only rhythms. There's always some other things happening. A rhythm can never exist on its own. It always hanging on some structures, and these structures can be visual, representational, or whatever kind. But there is always this toing and froing between rhythms and content. Content has to be rhythmical. Rhythm needs content, because without something, there will be no rhythm. Yeah? it's a little bit like, you know, if you write, for instance. So your sentences will have a certain rhythm. Whether you write poetry or prose, it doesn't matter. Now, with some writers, you really feel the rhythm of their words. So, for instance, do you remember the first sentence of Lolita? Anyone here read Lolita? Yeah, Nabokov? So you go something like, Lolita, light of my life, fire of my lungs, my life, my soul, Lolita. Something like that, maybe. But there is a rhythm to that, you know. You are immediately transposed into something very, very sensual. Yeah? And this even this name, Lolita, you know, just feel your tongue kind of touching your mouth in 3 different points, you know. You are immediately in a kind of incredibly sensuous envelope, you know. That's the sort of thing that you're talking about. There is truth to that. There is a certain knowledge to that. Maybe carnal knowledge, physical knowledge, yeah? But it is immediate, immanent, totally present, you know? It kind of fills you up, you know, like a sort of flavor. And yeah, there are words, and words have meaning. You can go to dictionary and check the meaning of each word. Yeah, you can say, you know, that Lolita has a name with various historical connotations, you know, and you can analyze it linguistically, you know, structurally, but at the same time, it's also a sensation. It fills your mouth in a specific way. Yeah, that's why it is an art form. Okay. Any thoughts about that so far? Any questions?
It's very interesting because, like, do you know this story by Mark Twain, the Diary of Eva, which was the sequel to the Diary of Adam, and it talks about the creation of the world, like basically these 2 diaries written with 2 characters. And Adam was kind of like criticizing Eva because like she was always trying to give names to things, like as if to reflect like their like basically immanent rhythm. And she's never happy, she's never satisfied because like the language is not enough to kind of capture this something that is like inside the tree as opposed to like inside the, I don't know, bird or something else. So it's kind of about this as well.
Mm-hmm. What is the name of the story?
It's the book called Letters from the Earth, and there are 2 parts, the Diary of Adam and the Diary of Eve.
Okay. So do you have any questions about the thing that we discussed so far? Yeah? I mean, we now leave DNG, at least for a while. We might go back to them next semester. But because I wanted to read with you something very, very recent, something that kind of occupied me a lot this year. And it is this.
Can I just ask, why is it called 1,000 Plateaus? I mean, what does it, because I haven't...
Well, I think that there is, like everything else with them, it's a game on several levels. First, 1,000 plateaus. Well,
I'm thinking about the Himalayas.
Yeah. And it is definitely that. So, what is a plateau? A plateau is like a plane. It's like a surface, you know? On the surface, you can move forward, you know? But there is no one surface. There is no one way to move forward. 1,000 plateaus is already a horizon. If you imagine, let's say, Himalayas, yeah? And each peak is not exactly a peak like that, yeah? But a sort of flat, yeah? So each peak, now it's not a peak, it's a plateau. Each plateau is a space. On each plateau, something can happen. But then you also somehow need to find a way to jump from one to another. Yeah? So it's a very different way of thinking from the sort of arboreal, linear way. There is 1,000 of them. Does it matter on which one you are now? Well, it kind of doesn't matter. There is 1,000 to choose from. You can go to any one. You know, there is no better or worse. There is another aspect to it, and that is that the Greek philosopher Plato. Now, Whitehead, another philosopher from the early 20th century, he said, all Western philosophy is footnotes to Plato. Why did he say that? Because Plato invented the idea. And as long as we think with ideas, we are all on some level Platonists. Yeah? So not to be a Platonist or to somehow step away from Plato is very difficult. But why he was called Plato? He was called Plato because he had a flat head. Yeah, that's why they call him Plato, because he had a, you know, so 1,000 Platos is also 1,000 Platos. Not just one, but 1,000 of them. You know, in a sense, if you can't beat them, then multiply them. You know, and then you don't have just one, you have loads of Platos, and then you don't have just one idea of what an idea is, you have loads of ideas of what an idea is, and then somehow you did overcome it, but without going head to head with Plato and proving to him why he is wrong, because to do that would be again to use an idea against an idea. You can use an idea against an idea, but you still remain in the realm of ideas. But if you just multiply Plato, like in Philip K. Dick, when he has this army of little boys that all carry a teddy bear, you know that? Yeah? It's a terrifying image. So if you just multiply them, then somehow you overcome the power of the idea, not by another idea, but simply by adding one to another, to another, to another, creating a rhythm. So here you have 1,000 Platos. It's a rhythm, it's a rhythm, it's a kind of force, well, like the Japanese dot. Yeah? Does it make sense, Maria?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Right. So, moving on and staying in the same place. That's what we are doing today. Moving on and staying in the same place. So I want to read with you today from this book by Claire Culbrook, Death of the Posthuman. Claire Culbrook, if you look on at her page on Amazon, you will see that she wrote many books about Deleuze, and she wrote some of the best introductions to Deleuze. She is, I think she's a marvelous writer, and she can, I generally don't recommend books that explain. Actually, I think, Marianne, wasn't you asking me last week about something to read? No, it was, so someone was asking me about something to read around these questions of becoming. So I think Claire Culbrook books, that's what would I recommend. That's what I would recommend. She has a book that's called Deleuze for the Perplexed. She also has a very good book that's called Deleuze and the Meaning of Life. So for many years, hello, she wrote books about Deleuze from a feminist perspective, and they are really wonderful. I think they are the best of their kind. But the last few years, she wrote some of her own work, which is really amazing. And this new book, Death of the Posthuman, came out this year. So it is very recent. And I think it's very important that we, in this class, also read things that just came out right now. They don't have the patina. You know, we don't know whether it will be one of these really important books. I think it is an incredibly important book. But we take a risk with something like that. But I somehow think your practice needs the very current forms of thinking. So that's what we're going to do today, and obviously it's the first time, I'm pretty sure maybe it is the first time this book is ever been taught. I don't know, because it only appeared just recently. So, how are you having the text in front of you? Do you have the text?
Yes.
Okay. Anyone here doesn't have the book in front of their eyes? Can you share? Yeah? If you read on the phone, I really feel sorry for you. Now, if it is not your own, I do not know how you're going to make notes. Okay. Now, death of the post-human. Yeah, so I just want you to think about the title for a second. What the title tells you? Death of the post-human.
There was something to die.
Who died?
The posthuman.
And what is the post-human?
Something that was presumably.
So the post-human is already dead. Yeah? So it's the death of the dead. Yeah, do you get it? You know? It's the death of the post-human is already a zombie. Yeah? It's a corpse. What is the post-human? Are we human or post-human?
I was thinking that the post-human is maybe a human which is still alive, but one that's superseded like a logical way of thinking.
True. Yeah, I think you're right, Ben. Yeah. And yet it also somehow suggests that the human kind of had to die for the post-human to emerge. Yeah? And yet, this post-human now is also in the throes of death. Okay, so
I thought states.
how? Explain.
I thought posthuman states.
Apes. Why?
Posthuman.
How? Is it in terms of Planet of the Apes? Well, post-human. Okay, what is the post-human? The post-human is a term that's been knocked around for the last at least 10 years since Catherine Hayles, Hayles, Catherine Hayles wrote this book with the title, How Are You okay? Is there anything here you want to ask or say?
Hello?
Yes.
No.
Okay. So, Catherine Hayles, in about 95, but maybe a bit earlier, wrote this book. It's called How We Became Post-Human. It's a very important book. It's in the library. Definitely worth reading. The name, she says in the introduction, I intended this name as a provocation. She was basically arguing there against the kind of theories that started to emerge around the rise of cybernetics and computing. So, I'm taking a step back here from the book we are going to read in order to give you a little bit of background on the posthuman. So, in this book, How We Became Posthuman, Catherine Hayles says, look, for a while now, there have been going on an argument about computers very soon becoming basically human. This argument says that all we really need is exponentially to increase the computational power of the computer, and once the computer arrives at a certain threshold, it will be basically as smart as a human being. So there is this approach to artificial intelligence. You know this concept, artificial intelligence, I normally just call it AI for short, yeah? So this artificial intelligence, or AI, has several approaches to it. The one that Catherine Hayles is taking to task is called strong AI. And what strong AI suggests is that once computers become powerful enough, once they can compute enough, fast enough, they become basically as intelligent as a human being. The proof is that you can now build a computer that can beat the best chess player in the world, the Deep Blue. Yeah? So, they have something to go by. It's not completely unfounded. But, so this argument is saying that we are not far off from a moment when computers are just basically become human. It means that
Then you call it the singularity.
it can be called singularity. Yeah. Singularity is also strong AI concept. Now, this is precisely the position. I mean, it became so much part of popular culture. You know, like what was this recent film? Ex Machina. Terrible film. So misogynistic. But this notion of a computer or a robot that it becomes indistinguishable from a human being. You know, another way of this is also can be referred to as the brain in the jar concept. So basically, you know, you can take a brain, put it in a jar, in a sort of soup with electrodes that feed it, and the brain will basically continue to function as a human being. Yeah, it can compute, it can think, you know, it can respond. So this is the strong AI notion of thinking about artificial intelligence. That intelligence can really be produced artificially. Okay. This is the notion that Catherine Hayles is arguing against. Yeah? So when she says how we became posthuman, she intends it ironically. She says, well, this whole notion is based on a false premise, as if you can separate the mind from the body. Now, where the separation between mind and the body is happening? It is happening with Descartes. What Descartes said, cogito, ergo sum, which means I think, therefore I am. Or as we discussed, I doubt, therefore I am. It means that, what does it mean to be? To be is to think. Yeah? If you can have a machine that can think, then the machine is really indistinguishable from a human being. Okay. So this is Catherine Hayles is arguing against this separation of the mind from the body. And she says, people who believe that computers can very soon, or not very soon, it doesn't matter, acquire intelligence, they are secretly, or not so secretly, Cartesians. They believe that it's the mind that is separate from the body. And for Catherine Hayles, this is unacceptable. She says that no, thinking is not happening in some kind of brain in a jar. It's not happening in a way that is detached from experience, from senses, from the body. What we call intelligence is the way we are in the world as physical entities, with our skin and nails and farts and digestion and pain, you know, and all these things together constitute intelligence. Intelligence is not mind as detached from the body. It is the body that is intelligent. Yeah? And where is this mind anyway? Is the mind in the brain? Is the mind and the brain basically in the same thing? Or is the mind somehow evenly spread throughout the body? So here is for Catherine Hayles, you see, it was important to point out that this way of thinking of artificial intelligence is incredibly dangerous because it promotes a very particular view of what it's like to be human. And it promotes a view that says the only thing that matters about the human is the mind. Everything else doesn't matter. Now, you can immediately see how this way of thinking about the human has very strong political connotations. Yeah? And Catherine Hayles obviously comes at it also from a feminist perspective, you know, but it's not even so much about feminism. It is about general privileging of the mind over the body. Somehow you can see how it connects to race, to a certain notion of intellectual superiority, to a certain notion of, you know, the one who reasons in the best way is also the more human. You know, if you, for instance, operate according to instinct, then you are less human than someone who operates according to logic and intellect. Yeah. So immediately you get, you kind of see the political doldrums. This way of thinking can take you. So this is the notion of the post-human. I still think this is a very good book, Catherine Hayles. Now, here we go to Claire Colbrook and the death of the post-human essay. So now it's the end of the post-human moment that Colbrook is writing about. Before we dive into the book, do you want a quick break?
Yeah.
Okay. At last we speak. Good. 10 minutes. I will need to end this session a little bit earlier than usual, at about 20 past 1, because at 1:30 I have a meeting. Just so you know. Okay. Are we ready to carry on? Okay, so where did we get to in this discussion? So we spoke about what this posthuman means. So very briefly, and one more time. So you have, it's such an important concept that gets kicked around quite a lot, the posthuman. So just so you have a very clear notion of what this really means and what it connects to. The posthuman in the Catherine Hayles interpretation, which is the dominant one, because this Catherine Hayles book really shaped the discourse around this question and introduced the notion of the posthuman into popular culture. Her argument was that people who talk about the posthuman subscribe to the Cartesian logic of separating the mind from the body and seeing the notion of the human as being somehow identified with the ability to think cognitively. Yeah, it's privileging of thinking and logic over, for instance, feeling and the senses. Yeah, because earlier before the session, I had a quick chat with Juan, who just came to the session for the first time, and we were briefly talking about the way truth can mean two different things. Yeah. So, for instance, 3 + 2 = 5 is a truth. But the other day, in my study, I hit my knee against the table, and it was excruciatingly painful. I was rolling on the floor there. It's a true story. In agony. And that was also a truth. There was a truth to that. You know, it was undeniably true. You know, if you told me this is not true, I would be very, very upset. You know, but it was just so painful. And yet, you can feel that it's a different form of truth from that. Yeah? And yet, we use the word truth. So,
or if you take like 3 chocolates and 2 chocolates and group them and count them again, would it be the same? Would it be different? And I know it can be different.
Well, it's a good question, but in the sense that, yes.
You need to define numbers like 2, 3, 5. There's no complete. Because if you take drops, like, I don't know, water drops, then 1 drop, and then you take 2 drops.
I think it was like
yeah,
the thing about is n minus 1 the same as n without 1? Like kind of the whole. So we were talking about this, what, 2 sessions ago? Yeah.
Yeah, when Dario was talking about n minus 1. It's a good question, but it's not exactly what we are dealing with at the moment. Because I don't want to get started, because I just want you to realize that There are two ways we can know things. Okay? Let's put it this way. Forget truth. There are two ways we can know things. I learned about the sharp corner of my table in a very immediate and real way. You know, it's highly doubtful if I will do that again, because the pain was excruciating. So there was certain knowledge there, and yet this is also a form of knowledge, and but they're different.
So the one is experience.
Okay, yeah, exactly. One is experience, and the other is it's taught. Yeah. But you see, when people say that you can build a computer that will basically be so fast that it will become like a human being, you discard experience as a form of knowledge. Because the computer will not learn about the table being sharp and painful by hitting its head against it. Yeah? So you discard this form of knowledge. You kind of say all this knowledge about the world you gather by bumping into things is not important. The only thing that matters is your cognitive ability.
I think that you could easily program a computer to learn. Like you could say, with like gyroscopes, you could say if you're walking and you bump into something, don't do that again. I think that's programmable.
But completely, it's true. Yeah.
There's a flip side to that, right? Because, like, even if you program intuition into a digital being or a posthuman, artificial intelligence, whatever it is, even if you program intuition, I don't know, for me, I'm stuck in this. There's no notion of serendipity, right?
Of
serendipity, discovering by chance. There's no happy accident that would dictate the AI's. Because all the happy accidents become irrelevant because it already knows how to solve.
Well, let's put it. We're going to talk about artificial intelligence in a separate session, and we will talk there about how computers learn. And both of you are right. Computers can. There are programs that allow computers to learn through accidents, but. And it is true that you could devise a robot that will learn from bumping into things. But bumping into things is only one tiny example of the kind of sensual knowledge of the world, or sensual experience, because, the rhythm we were talking about earlier, for instance, as we already noticed, the rhythm can put us into trance. So do you think computer or a robot can experience trance from being exposed to rhythm? Yeah. So the Captain Hayles' argument was that the artificial intelligence brigade is putting forward the notion of a human which is based on the separation of mind and body and privileging of the mind over body. As you know from all our previous sessions, or if you don't, now it's time to know it, that whenever there is a binary opposition, there's always one part that is dominant and one that is suppressed. So when mind and body are oppositions, one side will be over the other. Mind is always more important than the body. What are the political consequences of saying that mind is more important than the body? Then obviously, the one with a bigger mind, with a bigger brain, with more cognitive ability, is better than the one with a lesser cognitive ability. So everything gets measured according to the mind.
But if you have a binary, you can't have a...
No.
Why not?
Why not? I don't know. Why not? Why if you have, let's say, Well, I tell you why not. Because in the binary, while they are completely separate, they are defined in opposition to each other. There is always a kind of power relationship. You know, you have male and female. But somehow they are not equal. You know, somehow, for some reason, there is. Always.
It's a question. I mean,
well, you know, for instance, you know, even such simple thing as front and back, yeah, seem to be completely equal, you know, almost like geographic terms, and yet it's very clear that front is, well, if I turn my back to you, is somehow offensive, yeah. So even in that you can notice how
It
one.
also depends on the perspective.
Yes, whose perspective?
The viewers.
Exactly. Because there is always, in the binary opposition, there is always someone who has to make a judgment. So, yeah, male, female, one side dominates the other. Black and white, one side dominates the other. Why is that? It's an interesting question, but in a sense, it's not so important why is it so. What matters is that signifier and signified, written word, spoken word, image and reality. Whenever you have a binary, one always claims to be more real, more powerful, more relevant, and the other assumes the position of a copy, of a second, of a derivative. You know, the woman as a derivative of the man. Yeah? So, I know, this is upsetting. But this is the danger of thinking about artificial intelligence in this way. Because it introduces this notion, or at least reinforces the notion of the binary, and puts the mind over and above the body. So this is the posthuman. Now, we're still only talking about the title of the book, Death of the Posthuman. So this posthuman notion of the Cartesian cogito, of the artificial intelligence, that that Claire Colbert is taking as the title of her book, Death of the Posthuman. Is there anything else? Okay, just let me just tell you very briefly, there is another approach to artificial intelligence that is more interested not in building more and more faster computers, but in building machines that can feel. Yeah? And so, and it's very interesting, if you are interested in the artificial intelligence, investigating these two aspects of robotics. So, for instance, there is such thing as biologically inspired artificial intelligence that looks at the way, for instance, cats or spiders or mice operate in the world and try to create artificial computers, or basically robots, that work with, let's say, the spider's notion of what it's like to be a spider. This is very interesting, and we will spend a bit of time thinking about these things in the end of the semester and a bit in the next, because I really want to get to some artificial intelligence with you this year. Okay, but now I want to move to the introduction of the book, and this is on page 9. And the introduction has a title, Framing the End of Species, Images Without Bodies. Because, you know, you might ask what the posthuman has to do with making art and working with images. So the title already saying something to us. Images without bodies. I would like to ask someone to read the epigraph. To read the epigraph in italics, which is from Irving Welsh, book, Trainspotting. Anyone saw Trainspotting, the film? And you remember, this is exactly the monologue with which the film begins. So could someone read it to us, bearing in mind that this is a monologue from Irving Welsh, Trainspotting? Could someone read it to us? Okay. But also read the title as well, please.
Framing the end of the species, images without bodies. Society invents a spurious, convoluted logic to absorb and change people whose behavior is outside its mainstream. Suppose that I can all the pros and cons, know that I'm gonna have a short life and my sound mind, etc., etc., but still want to use snack. I'm so bad in the Scottish accent. They won't let me do it because it's seen as a sign, a fear, a finger. The fact that you'd simply choose to reject what you have to offer. Choose us, choose life, choose mortgage payments, choose washing machines, choose cars, choose sitting on a couch watching mind-numbing and spirit-crushing game shows, stuffing fucking junk food into your mouth. Choose rotting away, pissing and shitting yourself in a home. A total fucking embarrassment to the selfish, fucked up rats you've produced. Choose life.
Thank you very much. Sorry, I interrupted the reading. Yes, okay. What do you think about that? What do you think about that?
In terms of transport,
in your terms,
okay.
What does it say?
Society's imposing a structure.
Yeah.
It's not life, it's not living.
It's not living. It's not living. So choose mortgage payments, choose washing machines, choose cars, choose sitting on the couch watching mine. You know, it reminds me how they often say in the discussions about NHS, they often say that the patients want to have choice. You know, as if what you really want is to have choice. I mean, who came up with this idea that choice is what we really need? So yeah, you can choose mortgage payments, you can choose washing machines, cars, you know. And what is often known as freedom. Yeah, well, you have a freedom of choice. You can choose things. And yet, all of this is somewhat painted. Why is it painted? Society invents a spurious, convoluted logic that absorbs and changes people whose behavior is outside its mainstream. How do you understand that? You could say that. In what way?
Like either you choose life
or life chooses you.
Yeah.
But it's normal madness. But if you don't want to choose mortgage, you must be mad because you're not normal.
Exactly. There is a certain norm. And within this norm, you can have this couch potato existence. And, you know, the norm, I told you a while ago that Dostoevsky, in this book, Notes from the Underground, he says, well, I just don't like 2 + 3 = 5. I simply don't like that. What are you going to do? It's a little bit similar. There is a similar sentiment here. Okay. And actually, Julie, can you read the last sentence again?
Chose not to choose life. If the cunts can't handle that, it's their fucking problem.
Okay. Can you start from choose rotting away and read to the end of the section.
Choose running away, pitching and shining yourself in a home, a total fucking embarrassment to the selfish fucked up breasts you've produced. Choose life. Well, I choose no to choose life. If the cunts can't handle that, it's their fucking problem.
Thank you very much. Okay, so, and now I would like someone to read the first paragraph. So we just know what we are entering with this book. Yes, please.
There are three senses of extinction, the now widely discussed sixth great extinction event, which we've begun to imagine and witness, even in anticipation. Extinction by humans of other species, with the endangered species of the red list evidencing our destructive power. And self-extinction, or the capacity for us to destroy what makes us human. All three senses of extinction require a nuanced conception of climate. Climate is at once an enclosing notion imagined as the bounded milieu that is unavoidably ours, and a disturbing figure, for it is with the recognition that there is a climate, or that the human species is now recognizable as a being that for all its seeming diversity is nevertheless bound into a unity of destructive power. This is so much so that geologists are arriving at consensus regarding an Anthropocene epoch where man's effects on the planet will supposedly be discernible as a geological strata, readable well after man ceases to be, even if there are no geologists who will be present to undertake this imagined future reading. Climate is not only, then, the surface or terrain upon which we find ourselves, but something that binds us to this time on Earth with its own depletions and limits.
Great, thank you very much. Now, I want to ask, if you remember last week's session, if someone can make a connection between that and what we discussed last week. There is one key word in this paragraph that actually allows you to make the link.
Yeah.
Yes. Ben?
That was, I mean, there's that. They're the same milieu.
Excellent. Well done, both of you. So, how can you now articulate the connection? That was the easy part.
Yeah, I mean, in the last session we were discussing how these different milieus intersect with each other, and I think that the sort of entropy of our existence is intersecting with existence itself.
Excellent, brilliant. Now, this is a very good example. How? Because very soon we will start talking about your research paper. Yeah. So this is a very good example how a research paper, which is a paper of research. What do you think of research? It's exactly what we just did now. So what Ben has done, he took a paragraph from 1,000 Plateaus that discusses that life as made of 4 milieus, 4 environments, 4 atmospheres, internal, external, the boundary, and energy. Something like that, yeah, to put it in very crude terms. And linked it to this text. So the link, you see, the link is neither in 1,000 Plateaus nor in Colebrook. The link is Ben's own, and that is original research. Do you get it? You know, this is very important. Original research doesn't mean that you sit there in front of a blank piece of paper and come up with something. This is not research. Research is moving from one plateau to the next. So Marianne, to answer your question about the plateaus, last week was one plateau, and this is another. And we can figure out a way of moving from one to the next. So in each plateau, though, there is it's kind of its own logic, its own environment, if you like. So, and I think, so well done, both of you, for spotting it, because you need to be sensitive to language. You need to have this sensitivity to the way the text speaks. And this word milieu is, of course, very telling. What Kohlberg is saying about the milieu. Where is it? Yeah, all three senses of extinction require a nuanced conception of climate. Climate is at once an enclosing notion imagined as the bounded milieu that is unavoidably ours, and a disturbing figure, for it is with the recognition that there is climate, or that the human species is now recognizable as a being that for all its seeming diversity is nevertheless bound into a unity of destructive power. So in a sense, what is Claire Kohlberg cogito? If Descartes says, I think, therefore I am, what Claire Kohlberg says, look at the first sentence on page 10, frame it as succinctly as you can. A being, okay, can someone read the first line and a half on page 10? Vishal, can you read it?
A being that for all seeming diversity is nevertheless bound into a unity of destructive power.
Okay. Now, what will be Claire Kohlberg's cogito? I
think, therefore be I.
No, that's Descartes.
Destroy.
I destroy, therefore I am. Okay, you see? That's what she says. For Descartes, the posthuman, I think, therefore I am. I compute, therefore I am. I doubt, therefore I am. Okay, here we have another sense of what makes us human. What makes us human, what unites us in our humanity, is that we destroy. I destroy,
Human
therefore I am. Maria?
Is a virus.
A virus. Yeah. You can say that. Even though viruses don't only destroy, they also help to build.
Will.
I think you insulted viruses right now.
But can you say that, for example, if more natural where you say that I change everything? Or is this
Well, you can, but that's not what she says. I'm sorry, she says, bound into a unity of destructive power. Yeah? So that doesn't leave much room for, much wiggle room here. What makes us human is that we destroy. What we destroy? Our habitat and ourselves in the process. Yeah? That, I mean, the title, The Death of the Posthuman, I mean, the book not going to be a barrel of laughs. No, you sort of forget that. Do you know this film, by the way? I don't know why it's kind of jumped into my head, but do you know this film, Requiem for a Dream?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Well, sort of, the clue is in the name. You know, and it's going, and I wrote to the Kohlberg after I read this, and I said that I never came across a book that is in equal measure so profoundly beautiful and so unbearably sad. And, you know, if there is any glimmer of hope, is that it's still possible to write about it in such a powerful way. Because, yeah, Claire Kohlberg is, of course, an artist like you. She works with concepts like you. And the possibility of making that has some glimmer of optimism or hope. I kind of hope against hope. But there is no going away, Sasha, from the unity of destructive power. And this is the first paragraph. So here is this notion of Deleuze and Butler, this notion of the milieu that D&G was speaking about. They spoke about understanding of life as deeply interconnected, your internal organs, your stomach and your heart and your intestines, and the external world of the food and the water and the oxygen. They're all the time in this toing and froing. There's all the time movement. The movement is operating through the membranes of your body, which is another milieu. And what makes you move, what makes you come to class, what makes you get out of bed, it's something else. It's curiosity, it's appetite, it's some kind of energy, some kind of desire, some kind of passion, or maybe responsibility. So here you have these four elements. What happens when we consider them as separate? Well, the moment they start to be understood as separate or as binary, let's say the internal and the external as binary, and Marianne, for some reason, when we consider ourselves and the world as in this binary relationship of separation, one becomes more powerful than the other. Because because you spoke about why the binary. Yeah, now here's the binary, me and the world. Or even, me and you, and somehow one is more important than the other.
I was just going to mention, after this first section of the introduction, I saw like a huge link to the cover, which was this sort of plump, bourgeois-esque man who just seems like he's just going on his own way and consuming.
Oh, you mean the cover painting?
Yeah, it's like it's like these two different ways of living. Like one way of living is just doing smack, and that could be your concept of a good life, and this guy thinks that that's just totally rubbish, and his concept is maybe overeating and then just going about his way.
And yet, if you look at the cover painting, you could also see how this figure in the middle is also incredibly connected to everything around. It's sort of made with the same strokes.
Actually, there are two figures that are embracing the
Uh-huh.
I mean, because
Let me show you another little piece here. Let's go to page 11. And on page 11, towards the end of the page, about here, it says, I will read that. It says, we can only pose the question of human extinction, the fact that humans will become extinct, the fact that we cause other extinctions, and also that we are extinguishing what renders us human, if we locate the problem of climate change in action in the broader terrain of ecological destruction. Yeah? So I quite like that. Well, like is not the right word, but human extinction has three aspects to it. One is that the fact that humans will become extinct, the fact that we cause other extinctions of other species, and the fact that we are extinguishing or making extinct the very thing that makes us human. Yeah? These are the three aspects of extinction. We don't only make other species extinct, we also make extinct what makes us human. So it could be that in the process of extinction, what gets extinguished is our own humanity. So we are, Colbrook suggests, we are in a sense non-human because of the extinction that we cause. Yeah? Unless we understand the human being as the one who causes extinctions. So, now people don't like talking about climate change. People don't like talking about the Anthropocene. I had to think about it very carefully before bringing this text to you, because I didn't want to read it because it is sort of fashionable, but I thought, well, if we as artists try to keep our fingers on the pulse and really sense what is going on in the world, This seems to me quite important. And then this book came along. And in this introduction, which is called Framing the End of the Species, Images Without Bodies, I saw a very direct connection between the sort of things we are talking about and this notion of the end of species. So I'm going to show you where it is quite clear. Okay, go to page 13. Now, it's a shame that you don't have a projection. On page 13, in the middle of the page, there a few lines that start, it is at this point of exhaustion. Can you find it? It's about 15 or 12 lines from the top. So, Rupert, could I ask you to read, it's just one sentence.
It is at this point of exhaustion, when we have become frozen spectators in a world in which images appear as ready-mades, that we can see both that there is no guarantee that we will be human, and that it is human to forget oneself.
Okay. Can you see why I really like Claire Colburt's writing? You know, her sentences are just so, I think she's physically incapable of writing a bad sentence. What does it say? How do you see the connection here between the image and what it means to be human?
I can understand.
Okay.
So,
all right.
for instance, images appears to be ready-made.
What does it mean? A very good question. What does it mean to say images appear ready-made? What does it mean?
I have no idea.
They're there, just there.
What do you think that images appear ready-made? Well, I think it can mean two things. First is that they are just there. Images are just there. But also that the world appears as a ready-made image. On one hand, we are surrounded by images about the world, but on the other hand, the world itself appears to us as a ready-made image. Last week, again, we spoke about ready-made images in context of the sort of artworks that animals make. Yeah, that these are ready-made. And ready-made, well, it's a term that Marcel Duchamp introduced into the art vocabulary as an object that just is. Now, of course, they were not like that because Marcel Duchamp's ready-mades are completely not ready-mades. So the chair or the bar stool with a bicycle wheel attached to it, it's not like it's a ready-made. It's not like you can walk into a shop and say, can I have one of those? Yeah? It's not a ready-made, it's things put together in a very specific way. So on what level it is ready-made? It is ready-made because it's making a claim that an art object doesn't need to be an aesthetic object. It doesn't need to be crafted according to the laws of geometry or perspective or aesthetics. It doesn't need to be an aesthetic object. It's just a ready-made. You know, here, you know, this is a ready-made. It's an awful ready-made. But here you go. You know, it doesn't. The question of whether it's good or bad, whether it is aesthetically pleasing or not, doesn't apply to it. It claims to be evaluated in a different way. It somehow compels you to realize that this is still a cup of coffee. This is still a notepad. You put a cup of coffee in the notepad, and it is assemblage. Yeah.
It's also somehow linked to this first image made of the Earth from the space, like when you're not inside anymore, but you're like, well, like there's a planet. Right?
The Earth as a ready-made.
Yeah.
Excellent. Good. Does it help, Marianne? No?
It's okay.
Okay, but this is only the first step. Yes? Question? No? Okay. We have become frozen spectators in a world in which images appear as ready-made. Why? What does it mean to be a frozen spectator? Who is a frozen spectator? What does it mean to
Consumer?
Sorry?
The couch potato.
Couch, exactly. Perfect. And think about it, that's so good. The couch potato. The consumer. You are a frozen spectator. Well, first, as Carol says, when you just sit in front of the telly and look at the world through these horrid game shows, Max.
But in a way, we can feed this ready-made image to.
Feed it.
Yeah, feed it.
Feed it.
Feed. Feed.
To whom?
The frozen spectator feed this ready-made image in a way.
Well, but the spectator, this frozen spectator, is me sitting on my office chair in my study, for instance, browsing the internet. Yeah? Or watching telly. Now, yeah, I'm surrounded by ready-made images. They all come to me through all these various channels. The radio is blaring, I have 3 or 10 windows open on my screen, the TV is in our room. All of that feeds me ready-made images. Amidst all these images, here I am sitting as a frozen spectator. Bishop.
You would be a ready-made image too, right?
If I would be an image?
You would also become a ready-made image.
Correct. And that is what Henry Bergson says in Matter and Memory. Very good.
There's also this artwork by David Blanty. I think it's called like a very short method to make a video. Sorry, like a short method to make a short video about the end of the world. But he literally like records his process. It's online, so you can check. Like he records like this process of himself like working on this video and then like making this video like into the video being made. It's hard to describe, but it's really funny one.
Who is it?
David Blanty, the artist.
Can you spell the name?
David, like David, and Blanty like B-L-A-N-D-Y.
But the point, guys, because I think this is a really important sentence, and if you have the document highlighted, the job this sentence does, it makes a connection between spectatorship as activity and forgetting what it means to be human. Yeah? And in a sense, it says, it is at this point of exhaustion, tiredness, fatigue, yeah? When we become frozen spectators in a world in which images appear as ready-made, yeah? It is at the point when we consume the world as images, and we are in the world as spectators, yeah? A spectator, what is the difference between a spectator and a participant? We're just looking, yeah. We're not really taking part. The show maybe is still going on, but we are not acting anymore. We're just spectators. You know? Now, around this table, there are no spectators. But in a lecture theatre, you might say that it's a kind of spectator sport. Yeah? But what Kohlberg here is saying is that it's when we become spectators, when we passively consume ready-made images, at this point we realize that our humanity is slipping through the fingers. There is a kind of reverse relationship between spectatorship and humanity.
But spectating does affect the result, right?
Sorry? It does affect.
It does affect the results.
It does, yes.
Yeah.
Correct.
So, then what's the difference?
It does affect the result. What is the difference between what? So you say the spectator is never passive. The spectator always has some influence.
Yeah.
It is true, not in this sense, because it is true in the sense of the Schrödinger cat experiment. And I think that will become relevant. This is suggesting that there is a certain position of passivity towards the world, position of, it's a bit like in the theater. Now, of course, the audience in the theater has some impact on the play. Because if the actors performed without any audience, well, why would they do it in the first place if there was no audience? But at the same time, there is a very clear distinction. Either you are on the stage acting, or you are in the audience watching. Yeah. And in this model, watching is passive, and acting is active. Well, acting. But so the point is, and I think what you are saying is completely true and correct, but this is not the take. This is not the tackle that Colebrook executes here. She wants to say it's the moment when there is a reverse relationship between humanity and spectatorship. And I think that's where our engagement with image and photography becomes interesting. Maria, question?
What about the prosumer? Because we are becoming even more prosumer than spectators.
Prosumer.
Yeah.
Consumer.
Prosumer.
Prosumer. Well, what about the prosumer? Who is the prosumer, for instance?
One can produce and
consume.
Be consumer and producer of content.
Yeah, because who makes these ready-made images? We make them.
Exactly.
But if all our production...
It's not like many years ago, even theater, even television allow us to choose.
To choose what? Yeah.
We have an interaction
Choose.
even with machines, so it's not we are not completely passive.
Go to the epigraph from Irving Welsh. Choose life, choose mortgage payments, choose washing machine, choose cars, choose sitting on the couch. Yeah, we have all these choices, and yet all these choices are passive choices. All of these choices are the choices of the spectator. Yeah? So yeah, there is choice, and the spectator, as Alexandra correctly said, the spectator is not completely passive. And yet, there is something about spectatorship that puts us on the road away from humanity. So, yes, Julie?
I think in this specific sentence it's even more powerful because by reading the sentence, she tells us that we are the frozen spectators. It's the same.
How?
It's the same. How to say it? Helpful.
The act.
It's the
I
same
think what she's
as
saying.
yeah.
The act of us reading this, the act of us reading and trying to understand this itself as a spectator, as an act of being a spectator.
Yes. Okay. Good. True. Even this act of reading could also be a passive act. Yeah. So yeah, what hope there is then. Now, that's why I thought this would be a really interesting text to read with you, because once she starts talking about spectatorship, she basically talks about images. Once she talks about images, she talks about the thing we're all involved with. And let's look at the next paragraph that starts from most importantly. I want to read almost to the end of the page. And who could read it to us? Richard.
Most importantly, this highly human inhumanity seems to center strangely on the organ that organizes the human organism. For it is the same eye that reads and theorizes, that looks with wonder at the heavens, that is also seduced, spellbound, distracted, and captivated by humanity. Immanuel Kant already drew on a tradition of philosophical wonder, where he isolated man's capacity to look into the heavens as both the source of delusion that would draw him away from grounded knowledge into enthusiasm, and as the necessary beginning of power of thinking that would not be tied solely to sensation. The eye is geared to spectacle as much as speculation, with speculation itself being both productively expansive in its capacity to imagine virtual futures and restrictively deadening in its tendency to forget the very life from which it emerges.
Okay, great, thank you. All right. Do you think we need to read it again?
Yeah.
We need to read it. Shall we read it with another voice? Could someone else read it to us? So we read here another interpretation. Could someone, yes, please, Lynn.
Most importantly, this highly human inhumanity seems to center strangely on the organ that organizes the human organism. For it is the same eye that reads and theorizes, that looks with wonder at the heavens, that is also seduced, spellbound, distracted, and captivated by inanity. Immanuel Kant already drew on a tradition of philosophical wonder when he isolated man's capacity to look into the heavens as both a source of delusion that would draw him away from grounded knowledge into enthusiasm, and as the necessary beginning of a power of thinking that would not be tied solely to sensation. The eye is geared towards spectacle as much as speculation, with speculation itself being both productively expansive in its capacity to imagine virtual futures and restrictively deadening in its tendency to forget the very life from which it emerges.
Thank you very much. Now we're going to stop here, think about it for a second, and we'll read the second part of this paragraph. What do you think this section is about? It's about an organ.
Desire.
No. It's the eye. It is about the eye. Desire comes into it then, but as one constituent. Yeah? So it is about the eye. She says in the beginning, the highly human humanity seems to center strangely on the organ that organizes the human organism. So which organ organizes the human organism? The eye. The eye is the organ that organizes. Now, and strangely, this organ is somehow linked to this human inhumanity. Why is that? Because the eye seems to be capable of two separate functions. It can look with wonder. In other ways, the eye can experience things, and the eye can also detach itself from things. Yeah? So the eye is capable, on one hand, of being involved in what is happening, and on the other, the eye can detach itself and become purely speculative. You see it here. The eye is geared to spectacle as much as speculation. Now, the way to understand it is that on one level, you can, through the act of looking, you can be involved in what is going on. You know, you become part of something through looking. It's just one of the senses, just like touching is a sense and hearing is a sense. Looking is also a sense, and looking can give pleasure, horror, it can shudder you. So for instance, you know, if you look at someone's gushing wound, you might feel kind of shudder. Something will just fill your spine because it's just something unpleasant to look at. Do you know this experience? When looking can give you a physical shudder. Julie?
It's a mirror effect.
The mirror effect. It is the mirror effect. It's correct. Yeah. So that's one way of looking. The other way of looking would be the disinterested one, the detached one. Oh, so what we have here? Oh, we have a gushing wound. Okay. Now, obviously, if you want to train as a doctor, it will not be very useful if you just have a, blackout when you see a wound. You somehow need to learn to and you know what? For that reason, if you study in medical school, in the first week of the first year of the medical school, they take you down to the basement and they open the morgue and they give you a body to operate. Because if you cannot do that, you're not going to be a doctor. And you have to do it first thing, because you need to learn how to look in a very detached way. If you don't, you're not going to be a doctor. But guess what? There are these two ways of looking. You can look with shudder, with horror, with excitement, with desire, or you can look surgically, analytically. And this ability of the eye to operate in these two registers Colebrook is saying that the eye is geared to spectacle as much as speculation, with speculation itself being both productively expansive in its capacity to imagine virtual futures and restrictively deadening in its tendency to forget the very life from which it emerges. So there are two aspects to looking: spectatorship and speculation. Spectatorship now means some level of involvement. So for instance, I watch a horror film and I get scared. I'm still a spectator, but I also have experiences. But then there is also speculation. I look in a detached way. This detached, analytical way is also split into two. Speculation itself being both productively expansive. So because I can then, through speculation, I can use my ability to speculate in order to, for instance, imagine another future for myself, another possibility of becoming something else, becoming a woman, becoming a sunflower, becoming an artwork, becoming a cat. Or this speculative ability can also be restrictively deadening in its tendency to forget the very life from which it emerges. So the eye has this tendency to forget that it actually a physical organ that connects to the nervous system, to the blood supply, to the oxygen, to the milieu, the internal, the external, the membrane. And the eye has the ability to somehow forget about that and just imagine it is floating on its own in space, speculating about things. That, therein, for Colebrook, lies the danger of extinction. When we are on the road to extinction, when we are losing, forgetting our humanity, when we allow this eye to float in space. Okay.
What is the opposite of a
The other side?
What is the opposite of a speculator?
I think it will. Well, I don't know what is the opposite. And why do you ask?
Well, because
Actor?
Active.
Because you're
The actor.
Good. Yeah, actor.
What?
active.
I thought we shouldn't think. No, because I was thinking that when you're a spectator, you lose control, kind of. You just, sometimes it's much better to be in there and whatever it happens than watching something, because
that's right. No,
so I was just thinking, what is it?
Well, I guess what Maria said is actually quite useful to think about the actor.
The actor, but who acts? Someone.
A person who acts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you can be a spectator and an actor.
Yeah.
Sorry?
You can be a spectator and an actor at the same time. For example, with the medical experience of the morgue, you said you look at the same time you are acting on the body.
Yes, you can be both a spectator and an actor, but if you, but in order to be, for instance, a surgeon, you somehow have to block or restrict the very natural reaction to see, let's say, a body wide open.
You can say it's artist.
Sorry?
Or you can say it's artist.
Artist, as the opposite of a spectator. Good.
Or a spectator. All the time.
Look, guys, it's true, the artist is also a spectator, and to act is to be also a spectator. So don't fall into the binary traps again. All these things are very delicate, they are interconnected. What we try to understand here is that, for Colebrook is saying, is that if we allow the eye to act as this, or as this viewing apparatus that floats in space and just spectates, detached from a body, detached from the world, that is a deadening tendency to forget the very life from which it emerges. Yeah? So the eye, not the ear, and you remember last week some people were asking, what Deleuze and Butler have against the eye? You know, why they think that hearing is so much better? Well, here you get a way of elaborating on that. through saying that the eye has this ability to forget where it came from, to forget that it is connected to the body, connected to milieu. It's not independent, it's not separate. So I think this is very interesting because that really suggests something which I'm not entirely sure what it is about the image. Now, I want to look at the next three sentences that just follow directly from that. It starts from indeed there is something, and who could read to us? Ben, could you read to us?
Which Ben?
My computer just died anyway, so go for it.
It's three, but do you have something to look at? Do you have a text in front of you? Can you share with someone? Can you share with Alex?
It's fine, I'll sort it out.
Okay.
You just take someone's computer.
Yeah.
Take my computer.
Okay, Captain, you can, okay. So I just want everyone to settle down. So you have the text in front of you. And it starts from indeed there is something.
Indeed there is something essentially self-destructive about the human theoretical eye, our very openness to the world. The very relation that is our life is precisely what seduces us into forgetting that before there is an eye that acts as a camera or window, there must have been something like an orientation or distance, a relation without relation.
Okay, stop here, please. Now let's read this sentence again. Can I ask someone else to read it? Ben, could you read the sentence again? This very sentence we just read?
No. Before or indeed? Okay, sorry. Indeed, there is something essentially self-destructive about the human theoretical eye. Our very openness to the world, the very rationale that is our life, is precisely what seduces us into forgetting that before there is an eye, before there is an eye that acts as a camera or window, there must have been something like an orientation or distance, a relation without relation.
Great. Okay. What do you hear this sentence telling you? Should I read it again?
A way, I would like to make an example. When I take a photograph, if we look at theaters, I feel that if I take a portrait of her, I became a spectator of her. And so I'm going to use this speculative vision, detached, but in some way speculation, because fantasy comes from Greek, which means putting in the present of the side. So could be maybe, I think it's not wrong to speculate on a vision and make portraits of representative art and everybody like that. But at the same time, I'm going to lose the relation. So the difference, for example, in theater, in acting, is that if I put away my attention to look at you, I lose the interaction.
Well, hold on, Maria. Before you move on to that, let's just first make sure that we understand what this sentence is saying.
Yeah, that I think is about this gap present between, for example, a photographer which takes a portrait of a person, and an actor which interacts with another. I mean, actor not as
but that is the next step, right? Before that is just the notion about of seeing.
What does it mean to say? Julie.
I think it basically just says that we shouldn't forget that the eye is not an individual thing. It's detached to autonomous. Yeah, it's detached to others. It's in the milieu.
Yeah, you are right, but I think there is something else here as well. So first, there is something essentially self-destructive about the human theoretical eye. Not any eye, not any form of looking, theoretical looking. And you know what the word...
Can we say that the photographer used the theoretical eye?
Who said it?
Yeah,
I mean, the vision of the photographer.
Do you know what the word theory of theoria means in Greek? theoria, of theo. What is etymologically the root of the word theory?
Not yet, really?
No.
Hayles.
And what does it mean? No. Theos in Greek is spectator. Theory, and most our, I mean, it's quite amazing how many words in our vocabulary are somehow linked to practices of looking. Yeah? But theory is spectatorship. To theorize about something is to spectate, is to observe it. Now,
it's not taking responsibility.
I'm not sure if it's not taking responsibility. It is for it's more about forgetting something. Yeah. Now, there is something essentially self-destructive about the human theoretical eye. Yes, Ashok.
The notion that the human eye, this whole notion of the human eye only looks to conquer, only looks to assert its power. The theoretical eye, for me, is to forget that it's still an eye, it's still
yes, that's right, yeah.
A physical object, a physical organ that's connected to you, but it's also this whole notion of power.
Yes. What does it mean to look at something theoretically? It means to look at it, well, people say it sometimes objectively, yeah, but it's slightly different. To look at something theoretically is in a detached way, isn't it? Why?
Yeah,
He puts here like the window. But it's like detached, it doesn't to be logic, it doesn't be like thinking at all. I can be detached and look at, I don't know, imagine other things maybe which not come from the ego, or they come from dreams. So
But that's like
let's take schizophrenia.
Well, yeah, good. To look at something scientifically.
Yeah.
What does it mean to look at something scientifically or theoretically?
Unbiased.
Logic, thank you, logically. Very good, yeah. So, what does it mean to look logically? It means, Vishal, you want to say something?
I don't know about logic, but I would say unbiased.
Unbiased.
Because logic becomes a bit heavy with its connotations. Logical becomes a notion of logic. And if you look at the human theoretical eye, then the notion of logic is the human notion of logic. But if you're going to say it's the theoretical human eye that you're going to look at or talk about, then maybe you should just look.
I think what is happening now is that not me you individually, but people here trying to argue with Colebrook's statement. And I understand why you want to do that. But I think before we do that, let's see what she's actually saying, because it is even more hard-hitting, you know? So first, there is something essentially self-destructive in the theoretical eye. Now, to put things blatantly simply, theoretical eye is the eye of the photographer. This is the theoretical eye. The eye that goes around making the world into ready-made images, as was mentioned earlier in this paragraph. This is the theoretical eye. Yeah? This is the scientific eye that analyzes, that wants to know the molecular weight, the color, the shape, the form, and not what actually it has to do with my life. So there is something essentially self-destructive about the human theoretical eye, because our very openness to the world, i.e. our very ability to look at the world, is precisely what seduces us into forgetting that before there is an eye, we are on the next page, on page 14, before there is an eye that acts as a camera or a window, there must have been something like an orientation or distance, a relation without relation. Okay, so what the eye makes us forget something. What the eye makes us forget?
Our emotion. Our emotion. What it is about.
The eye makes us forget that before there can be any kind of looking or representation or an image, there has to be a relation. Yeah? Before I can look at you scientifically or objectively or theoretically, there has to be a relation. It is this relation, this interconnectedness of all these milieus. Milieu in plural is milieus?
Yeah.
Yeah? Before all these milieus can be connected, I mean, no, sorry, I wrong-footed myself. That before there can be any form of representation of the other, there has to be a connection. Bishop.
It's the notion that it makes you forget your humanity. It makes you forget your humanity.
Yes, that's right, yeah. But how this forgetting of humanity is connected specifically to the eye, not to the ear, not to the nose, not to the lungs, but to the eye. Why?
Because it's judgmental.
Because it can pass judgment, yeah. Because the eye has these two modalities, the sensual and the analytical, yeah. And it is the analytical one that makes us forget that before there can be a picture of something, before you can take a photograph of something, there has to be a relation of some sort.
Curiosity, surprise, or something.
Curiosity, surprise, or some kind of link. Yeah, yeah. So something very essential has to be forgotten before a picture can be made.
It is, that would be forgetting your humanity to look.
Yes.
The very act of seeing is to forget your humanity.
Look at the next, it's just 3 lines before the end of this paragraph. And it says here, human reason is constituted by a certain self-forgetting. Can you find that? It's very short and sharp. Human reason is constituted by a certain self-forgetting. Now reason, what is reason? It's logic. It's rational thinking. So there is a certain forgetting at the very basis of rational thinking. But forgetting of what? Forgetting of what you said, Sasha. Of that prior to rational thinking, there has to be some relation. There has to be some fairy tale, some curiosity, some appetite, some feeling, some sensation. Rational thinking claims objectivity. Objectivity implies detachment. Yeah? To think objectively about something is to think about it without consideration of whether it will be good or bad for you. Yeah? So for instance, yes?
Is she in a sense then saying that we're forgetting our primal nature?
We're forgetting our humanity. Primal nature I think is a bit different, but we're forgetting our humanity. We're forgetting the desire. Yes. So I think Ben was right when he said it is about desire. It just was moving forward too quickly. What does it mean to think about it rationally? So we have, let's say, to become a judge in court, you need to be detached. For instance, if the case that brought in front of you and you are the judge is to do with someone in your family or something that you are personally involved in, then you will not be allowed to judge that. Why? Because to judge, you need to claim a certain distance, certain objectivity. Yeah? If you are personally involved, then your capacity to judge is damaged. Okay? This is the same. It's exactly the same model in any kind of reason-driven or analytical discourse. It's all based on detachment. So, where do you see this self-forgetting in photography? Well, for instance, I think it's interesting how in the classical, traditional documentary photography, there is always a certain forgetting of the photographer. Because we know nothing about the photographer, whether it is Salgado or Henri Cartier-Bresson or, you know, they are totally removed from the image. Because there has to be, and what will happen if they will not be removed? Another area where you can see self-forgetting very clearly, it's just a different example, is in pornography. In a porn movie, you will never see the people who hold the mic, or the cameraman, or the cables. Why not? Not because they're not there, but because the moment there will be something there that reminds you that actually this scene is choreographed, mic'd, shot from several angles, lit, you know, the whole experience is ruined. Yeah, the experience of watching a porn movie can only be sustained as long as all the production values are completely and utterly removed. And let's say, if you came across art porn, then art porn is exactly the opposite. Art porn is porn where the making is very much part of the scene. So, for instance, what is the name of this? Amalia Ullman. Well, I had in mind the director of Kids. What's his name? Larry Clark. Larry Clark made this art. I forgot the name of this piece now, but it's really brilliant. And it sort of really shows the inner workings of making a porn film. You know, you would not be able to see anything less pornographic because it's so full of how something is being made. Yeah. Now, I just got a reminder that I have a meeting in 15 minutes. Okay. Human reason is constituted by a certain self-forgetting. Now you see, that's why I think this book is really that interesting. And I think I would just suggest that you read the introduction in its entirety. I don't think you need to read the rest of the book unless you want. It's full of gems. But the introduction is really, really interesting. Now, Sasha, next paragraph, there are two sentences here that start from Heidegger had already diagnosed. Can you just read that to us?
Heidegger had already diagnosed Western metaphysics with Descartes as a fulcrum. Descartes is able to establish man as the subject, or as that which remains present, because Western thought has always proceeded by forgetting the temporalities through which all beings come into presence.
Okay, so now we get to understand what actually is being forgotten in this human reason. Human reason is constituted by a certain self-forgetting. But what does it mean, this self-forgetting? Here we come to something very specific that is forgotten. Heidegger already diagnosed Western metaphysics with Descartes as a fulcrum. What is fulcrum? Is a pivot, yeah. Is a sort of place where, let's say, you place a lever. Yeah? It's like the Archimedean point. You know the Archimedean point? Yeah? Okay. So, Descartes is a certain breaking point. Why? Because Descartes is able to establish man as the subject. Why? You remember cogito? I think, therefore I am. Man, who is man? Man is one who thinks. The one who thinks is also the subject. What is being forgotten in this Cartesian model, Colebrook says? What is forgotten is that thought never operates in a vacuum. It never operates on its own. Thought is always linked to time and space. I think here, now, with you, in this room, in this moment. This is, and my thought right now is framed and configured by my own internal duration. Why did you have duration as your unit 1 brief? Because this is the one thing that always gets forgotten in talking about thought. That thought is always linked to certain specific time, to certain specific temporality. And it is this temporality, it is this specificity of existence that is being forgotten in Descartes. Another way of saying the same thing is that Descartes compels us to forget about the body. Because for Descartes, the body doesn't think. The mind thinks. But the body can be left in specific space and specific time. Because thought acquires this quality of being rational and eternal. Rationality doesn't have any specific dimensions. 3 plus 2 equal 5, and it was so when the cave person took 3 hides and put another 2 hides to it and got 5 hides, and when in the future, the space man, will take 3 space suits and another 2 space suits, and it doesn't matter if you add space suits or bones or hides of cows, the result is always the same. Why? Because reason is eternal, immortal, forever, and infinite. Yeah? But in this way of reasoning, in this way of thinking, something is being left behind. What? The body. The physical, messy, sensual presence in this here and now. The aching, the smells, the desires, the appetites, the duration. So here you have basically the very center of this situation Claire Colbert is talking about. Our own inhumanity is connected to this infinite, eternal, rational thinking. As long as we privilege this mode of looking at the world above everything else, there is a sort of slippery slope towards the inhuman, or the abstract intellectual speculation about the world that forgets that we in the world are one. What remains to do then? Well, I'm just putting it on the table very quickly because I have to go in 2 minutes. What is left to do then is to focus somehow our attention on duration, on becoming, on the body, on the senses, on all these ways of knowing the world, like me hitting my knee against the table. This kind of sensual, sensitive, carnal experiences, that's what actually, you might say, that is the artwork. Your artwork. Okay. Great. Thank you very much.